until the current period, or until the last 30 years. It was conventional wisdom, both in science and theology. We're alone in the universe, the single repository of life, anywhere in the known universe. Well, no one believes that anymore.
In 1961, astronomer and astrophysicist Dr. Frank Drake devised the Drake equation, which calculates the number of worlds with intelligent life capable of technologically communicating with us. According to Drake's own calculations, there are 10,000 communicative civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. 4 decades later, the Drake equation has been greatly expanded on by Dr. Amir Axel, best-selling author and associate professor of mathematics and statistics at Bentley College, Massachusetts. His latest book, Probability 1, deals with why there must be intelligent life in the universe.
My calculation of Probability 1 goes far beyond what was explored with Drake's equation. Drake's equation refers only to our galaxy. My calculation goes to the visible universe as a whole, which has billions of galaxies and each containing billions of stars. So if you multiply all these numbers, you get tremendous odds for the existence of life.
I think one of the main changes that has taken place in recent years in astronomers' views of whether or not there might be other civilizations elsewhere in the universe has to do with the fact that we've discovered dozens of other planetary systems around other stars. Now, in most cases, the planets are giant planets like Jupiter, not the kind that would harbor life. But where there are those kinds of planets, there are likely to be other planets, too, in those solar systems. And so we're optimistic these days about life elsewhere.
What's the nature of the universe we live in? What is our relationship to the larger reality?
I looked up, and all of a sudden, there was this, gotta say it, flying saucer.
Didn't even make a sound. Not even a sound.
A little bit of swamp light appears here. It goes out. Another one appears over here. That goes out.
Billy, Jericho Billy.
And it was just gone.
I saw one, but I don't know what, it just disappeared.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
I was a part of the United States Air Force cover-up for 18 years.
There's no way within the military or within the government of keeping track of something that is classified.
The UFO. Even with the experience I had being on the top of the government all the years, I couldn't tell you who to go see.
This should be the subject of rigorous scientific investigation and not the subject of rubbishing by tabloid newspapers.
I'm here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports. There have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve.
For the last 50 years, 95% of all UFO incidents have been explained in down-to-earth conventional terms. These explanations include misidentified aircraft, weather balloons, atmospheric phenomena, light aberrations, mass hallucinations, hoaxes, and swamp gas. However, these explanations cannot be applied to the remaining 5%. The cumulative evidence in these cases leads towards a possible conclusion that some UFOs are not of Earth origin. In this documentary, we will present unexplained cases from around the world, investigate 50 years of official contradictions and denials, and put forth possible reasons for secrecy. We will examine scientific theories on interstellar travel and discuss the current movement for official disclosure on a subject that has primarily been considered unworthy of serious investigation. The case of the Phoenix Lights began on an evening in March of 1997.
Late breaking. You're watching News 15 at 10.
Do these lights belong to visitors from outer space? Hundreds of people across the valley think it's a distinct possibility. Good evening. I'm Mark Bailey.
And I'm Robin Sewell. Thanks for joining us. We start tonight with those strange dots of light that were the talk of the town.
As reported, multiple UFOs were sighted throughout the Phoenix Basin. Numerous eyewitnesses were already outside looking up into the night sky to catch a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet. Michael Tanner is part of a team of investigators who received roughly 800 reports from eyewitnesses regarding the Phoenix incident.
Between 8:15 and 8:45, we had enormous craft at varying altitudes come right through the center of the Valley of Phoenix, led by a formation of orbs that were clearly visible through most of the state.
It passed right in front of us, just about right above eye's length. My estimate of the size of the craft from the nose as it passed us where we lived to the end of the left wing that passed in front of us was over 5,000 foot long.
It's coming across the sky, and as it's moving, it's blocking and unblocking the stars. There is actually a shape. It was actually 5 lights that were a V, 1 in front and 2 on each side, and it was perfect. It was a perfect triangle.
The object we saw, if we opened up a newspaper, you could not block out the object that we saw.
People say, Mike, now you saw a B-2 bomber. My response was, we could land all 40 of our B-2 bombers on the wing of that craft.
He says, you're not going to believe what I saw. And I said, yes, I would. I said, that's all that's been on the news all night long is this craft.
Explanations have been tossed about, that there were flares, that there were planes flying in formation. But Mark and Robin, we checked with the FAA today, we checked with Sky Harbor, and we checked with Luke Air Force Base, and there's been no official explanation of those strange bright lights last night.
Truck driver Bill Greiner was driving south on I-17 towards Luke Air Force Base. He witnessed several fighter jets scramble to intercept 2 UFOs directly overhead.
I pulled my truck alongside the west silos, which faces Luke Air Force's base, was like right there, and I was here unloading. Everything was completely quiet. It was like really eerie. There was one right over the base, and then there was another one out toward Wickenburg, and these things were just hovering. They were huge orbs, but it didn't make no sound or nothing. It was just hovering right there over the base. All of a sudden, I hear a lot of roaring coming out of Luke Air Force Base, and here there's 2 fighters coming out, and they had the afterburners on because there were huge flames coming out the back of these things. Ripped right around the back of me and shot right for those things. Then it disappeared on them, and it was just gone.
The military says the lights over Arizona last night were flares, but the people who saw the lights last night say they couldn't have been flares.
In central Phoenix, in what is known as the Sunny Slope area, the Lay family were coming home in the early evening to watch for the Hale-Bopp comet when they witnessed a very large craft fly directly over their house.
You know, because when the craft went over, I really focused on the light. The tip was right out in the street, and the arm is going by, and the end of the arm was at least to that mountain over there. It was 600-700 feet away, with these huge lights set inside of it.
And I look inside, and it's like, it's wavy. When you look down the street on a hot day in Phoenix, above the street's like, it's really wavy, and you see everything kind of distorted, and that's what it looks like up inside the middle of the craft.
And it just skimmed by, didn't even make a sound, not even a sound.
Further eyewitness testimony came from Stacy Rhodes and her daughter Emily, who both saw a giant craft fly over their car.
It was gunmetal black. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't invisible. It was more of a dull bluish black color.
And we both just stayed there and looked at it for a couple minutes, and it was completely silent.
Mike Fortson spotted the same craft from his backyard in Chandler, a suburb of Phoenix.
When you're looking to the north towards Phoenix proper, the lights of the city of Phoenix and Tempe and Scottsdale and all these here will form a gray background. And this was a black object coming through a gray background. We had no problem whatsoever seeing this vehicle. We knew it wasn't really ours because it was just too doggone big. Matter of fact, profoundly massive is a better way to describe it. We don't really have words in our language to describe something that large. It was huge.
Councilwoman Frances Barwood was approached by a reporter who complained about the lack of response from local government regarding the sightings.
What this reporter said was that they had gone to every level of government, including the city of Phoenix, and nobody would talk to them. That this object went from north of Prescott and Paulding all the way down to Tucson, and then was also seen in Wickenburg, and nobody would give them any answer. They either told them that they were not going to talk about it at all, or that there was nothing, that nothing happened.
Responding to mounting pressure from his constituents, Governor Fife Symington held a press conference.
Oh, I'm going to order a full, investigation of this through DPS. We're going to make all the necessary inquiries, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to find out if it was a UFO.
Later that day, Governor Symington held an unscheduled live press conference to announce that they had discovered the source behind the Phoenix lights.
Now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
Well, I think everybody pretty much laughed at it. I thought it was really disgusting. He was just dismissing everything that these people had seen and said, just like we're all Looney Tunes. I just thought that was a really improper attitude for somebody in his position.
Nobody in state, local, federal, military, nobody wanted to talk about it. They didn't want to interview witnesses. They said it didn't happen. They said it didn't concern them. There was one councilwoman, Frances Barwood. She's the one that spoke up and said, why don't we investigate? And then when it came time for her election, she lost. And the press, the media, everybody else was really trashing her bad.
Why is everybody so afraid? And the only thing I can think of is, one, they're afraid of their careers, which, comes to a point of what's more important, your soul or your job, and I guess to them it's their job. And the second thing is the scorn factor.
The U.S. military's involvement in the UFO subject dates back to World War II. It began with the sighting by Air Force pilots of mysterious luminous orbs called Foo Fighters, which would pace aircraft during missions and dart away.
They fly circles around anything we've got. That strange behavior includes the ability to both hover and move at extremely high velocity, to make right-angle turns at high speed, to go straight up, straight down, all of this typically without any noise, without any visible external engine, without any wings, without any tail. We simply could not do that back 50 years ago.
In the summer of 1947, numerous UFOs were spotted by local authorities, airline pilots, and civilians worldwide. By July, these sightings made headlines in newspapers all across the United States, culminating on the 8th of July with the alleged recovery of a crashed disc on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The military were quick to respond.
They send agents out all over this area here to try to get information on Roswell. And yet we stood back like fools and said it didn't exist. It was a weather balloon.
50 years after the incident, Colonel Philip J. Corso, formerly a member of the National Security Council, revealed that the weather balloons over Roswell was a cover story for the crash of an alien craft.
We had the cover to protect our own installation because they tabbed us as coops and they destroyed our organization. You had to understand what was going on in the government and the climate of opinion, though. So, discretion better part of valor. We just kept it to ourselves. Only some certain people knew about it, head to head, brain to brain, no paper trail.
Although the official position claimed that UFOs didn't exist, this secret memorandum written by General Nathan Twining suggests otherwise. The consensus expressed by the Air Materiel Command was that the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. The memo continues. There are objects probably approximating the shape of a disk of such appreciable size as to appear to be as large as a man-made aircraft. In this chaotic climate, and in an effort to reorganize the U.S. military, President Truman passed the National Security Act. This act built the framework for America's modern national security structure. Among other things, the act established the National Security Council and the CIA.
The National Security Act of 1947 allowed for the creation of a state within a state.
Author of UFOs and the National Security State, Richard Dolan, asserts that the signing of the National Security Act created an intelligence infrastructure capable of maintaining a very high level of secrecy.
One with an enormous amount of power, an enormous amount of wealth, an enormous amount of secrecy, and latitude of action.
The level of secrecy imposed by the U.S. government on the UFO issue is revealed in this top-secret memorandum. It was written in 1950 by electronics engineer Wilbert Smith, a high-ranking official in the Canadian Department of Transport. After a meeting with a top government scientist employed by the Pentagon, Smith was informed that flying saucers exist, and more significantly, the matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States government, rating higher even than the H-bomb.
In my opinion, I think they were worried that it would panic the public if they knew that someone had vehicles that had this kind of performance, way back right after World War II.
On a clear night in February of 1951, Lieutenant Grant Bethune sat at the controls of a U.S. Navy transport plane en route from Iceland to America. The flight was routine until Bethune spotted a strange group of lights below his aircraft.
And we were at 10,000 feet, and this was about 15 miles away. It came up to us like that, just about that fast. And of course, I disengaged the autopilot to put the nose over. I thought we'd be able to go under this thing and not collide with it. And when I did, it's staring me in the face, and you couldn't see anything out the cockpit. We could tell it was a monster about 300 feet in diameter. As it drifted out to our right, we could see the dome.
According to Lieutenant Bethune, the object remained in this position for about a minute. It then accelerated rapidly and disappeared above the horizon. Upon landing at an air base in Newfoundland, he was briefed and interrogated by several officers from naval intelligence. At the conclusion, he was ordered to never speak about this incident again.
You accept anything like that simply because you're in the military, and that's your job, is defending the country, and whatever they tell you to do, you do.
The identity of the group responsible for imposing the secrecy around the UFO issue was revealed to Lieutenant Bethune 7 months later in a conversation with an officer from naval intelligence.
And I asked him the question, I said, what happens to this report? Where does it go? He said it goes to Navy Intelligence, Chief Naval Operations. Then it goes to a Joint Intelligence Committee. Now, of course, later on, I learned that it was MAJIC, which is Majority Agency of Joint Intelligence. Now, he said this was a small committee, that this committee determined whether it would affect our national security, that if it did, it would probably never go anywhere else.